Hey everyone, in this video I'm actually going to be narrating over the top of some pre-recorded footage here. These are some tests that I actually recently did after the Awake patch because of two changes that got made to Illium's DPS combo. And I'll explain what each test is in a minute, but first I want to explain those changes to the combo. So the first change they actually put in the patch notes was that they reduced the delay on both Javelin and Orb by 24% when used by themselves, not when comboed together. Basically, that just means that when you're using either a single orb or a single javelin, it happens a lot faster than it used to, which is a really nice change because you no longer get stuck in as much end lag when you're done using an orb. The other change that they did not put in the patch notes is that the combo is no longer affected by your ping, which is huge actually. For those who don't know, prior to Awake, your ping heavily influenced how fast or slow the combo actually happened. And this change, while it's really good, also has a downside, which is kind of unique. Because prior to Awake, if your ping was in like a very specific sweet spot, I don't know the exact ping that you needed for this, but if your ping was in that sweet spot, then what actually happened when you did a combo was that you would end up skipping a lot of orbs, but you would still be canceling the javelin animation. So as a result, you would be shooting out way more javelins than you were supposed to, basically. Which was actually a huge plus for DPS. You lost out on the consistency of keeping up your Lucent brand stacks and keeping up Umbral brands on the enemy, but you did way more lines with Javelin. Now, because it's no longer ping-based, orbs always happen, they never get skipped like that, and so as a result, comboing the old-fashioned way ends up doing less lines overall than it did pre-patch. And actually, even because of the change to the standalone delay for Javelin, comboing now does less lines than just spamming Javelin by itself, not comboing whatsoever. And so that's kind of what spurred on these tests that are playing in the background right now. This first test is being done with the old method of comboing, so alternating Orb and Javelin. And basically, I just wanted to do a 3-minute test where I used Flash Crystal Battery off cooldown, Glory Wings as soon as it was up, Deus right before Glory Wings, etc., etc. I always made sure that I had 2 Crystalline Spirits ready for Glory Wings, so I got the full final damage bonus in every test. And then the last little quirk that I noticed through some of my tests in the last couple of days is that the position of your crystal actually heavily influences how many total lines you end up doing. I've noticed that if the crystal is between you and the mob, you end up doing less lines than if the mob is between you and the crystal. So I always made sure to have my crystal behind the dummy in all of these tests to make sure I'm maximizing the amount of lines I get in each test. So this is the end of the first test where I was doing the traditional comboing method. You can see the results here. I'm not going to talk about them in too much detail, but basically the total damage, 3.73 trill, and so that's the number to beat. The next test we do after this one is going to be the new method of just using Javelin, and while I say just using Javelin, I am still going to use orbs every 5 or so seconds to make sure I keep up Umbral brand stacks on the dojo dummy. And I also maintain my Lucent marks for the magic attack buff. So you'll see me use an orb roughly every time that the domination reaction comes off cooldown. I tried to watch it at the top so that I could be consistent with it. But other than that, I am only using javelins. And you'll see at the end of that test, it ends up doing a lot more lines, but the damage actually evens out as a result of having the 3-minute duration on the test. And that's because the crystal ends up charging a lot slower when you're only using javelins, which, I mean, duh, makes sense. But even though it's more lines and more damage in the moment, because you're getting less charges and less uses of Glory Wings overall, it's actually about the same in a 3-minute duration between comboing and using this new method. Initially, when I was running these tests, I didn't actually consider the fact that Glory Wings was going to be way less frequent when using this new method, so I was just like, I guess we're only using Javelin now. But it is actually still pretty close, and as you could see at the end of the previous test, we actually almost got off 4 Glory Wings in the span of 3 minutes. It wasn't quite 4 because the 4th just came off cooldown, or sorry, just got fully charged rather, at the end of the 3 minutes, so it didn't get used in the actual test. But in a real situation, it's effectively twice as many Glory Wings as we're going to get in this test. Not exactly twice, but more or less twice, you'll see. I only get 2 here, but I end up charging like half of a bar after, so it's definitely way more procs of Glory Wings, but the difference does almost get made up by just the sheer number of Javelin lines. Now, there's going to be a third test after this one is over as well, of a third strategy that I kind of thought of after going through these first 2. And that is because of how fast the crystal charges when comboing versus when using only Javelin, I figured if you comboed while using Flash Crystal Battery, which is the hyper skill that doubles how fast your crystal charges, while comboing and using that hyper skill, you can actually almost fully charge a crystal from 0 to 150 within the span of that 12-second buff. So I figured that would actually probably be the smarter option, is that whenever you have Flash Crystal Battery up to combo, to make sure you're getting the most out of that skill and you're charging Glory Wings within like 10 to 15 seconds. And then when Flash Crystal Battery is down, I'm going to use the new method, which is just using mostly Javelin and then an orb every few seconds to make sure I'm keeping stacks up. And that strategy, I'm kind of spoiling it, but that strategy actually ends up being the best of the 3 by quite a decent margin. So I think moving forward, that's probably going to be the dominant strategy and the strategy that I try to adapt to, because I'm obviously used to doing the traditional comboing where I'm just spamming Javelin and Orb. So learning this new strategy is going to require a bit of, muscle memory rewiring, but I think it'll definitely be worth it in the long run. You'll see the difference. So here's the end of the Javelin only test. It's very slightly weaker than the comboing test was. In fact, you could probably argue that that's even just due to human error, maybe, in either ending the timer or maybe just I messed up at some point in either test. So both of them end up being very close. For most people, I would say comboing is still probably the go-to over this strategy if you're going to pick one or the other. But if you're planning on going with the optimal strategy, then you're definitely going to want to use the mixed method that I'm about to show off in this test. So again, in this test, I'm going to be comboing when I have Flash Crystal Battery active to maximize my charge. And then when Flash Crystal Battery is off, I'm going to be using the new strategy of only using Javelin and then occasionally Orb. And you'll see how that shakes out at the end. Now, I do want to make a couple of notes here. This doesn't apply for most people, myself included, but the Javelin only test does still end up being more hits per second overall, even compared to this mixed strategy. So if you're an Illium who is essentially capping every line, the new strategy actually is what you're going to want to use all the time. Even though you end up charging fewer Glory Wings, you're getting more hits per second, and as a result doing more damage because all of your lines are capped. So Glory Wings, the damage boost doesn't really matter as much. I don't think there are any capping Illiums in GMS, at least not that I know of. I'm certainly nowhere close on the bosses that matter, so for the time being, I'm going to still be trying to learn this new strategy of mixing between the traditional combo for Crystal Battery and the new method of mainly Javelin only for when Crystal Battery is off. I don't have a whole lot else to talk about throughout the duration of this test. I'm just going to let it run here. One thing to note is that during none of these tests did I use Conversion Overload, the Grandis, what do you call it? What's the skill name? Grandis Goddess's Blessing, I think. nor did I use the new V skill, the Crystal Gate or Templar Knight. Those things are kind of separate from what I was trying to test here, which was just the difference as a result of using these different methods of comboing or not. And I was worried that if I tried to use those other things as well, I could end up basically messing up at some point in any of the tests, and as a result skewing the end totals. So I wanted to just simplify these tests to make sure I captured the exact difference between all three methods. So keep that in mind. Obviously, in a real situation, there would be more damage, more lines as a result of using all of those skills and buffs. I also didn't use Crystal Ignition, but in general, Crystal Ignition is fewer lines than just using Javelin, so that wouldn't really have much of a change either. Especially if you end up capping or getting past a certain damage threshold, Crystal Ignition wouldn't be worth using. Obviously, at a low level, which is where I'm at and where most people are at, it is worth using in a regular test, but again, I wasn't focused on maximizing these tests. I was focused on looking at the difference between each strategy. So we're almost done here, only 20 seconds left. You can see with the mixed strategy, I think I actually got off 3 Glory Wings. So the same number as the comboing test. Obviously, I don't get my crystal charge to nearly as high because in the comboing test, it was almost fully charged by the end of the 3 minutes. Whereas you can see here, it's only like barely even at 30. But despite that, it still ends up being about 200 mil more overall. Or sorry, 200 bill. Numbers are hard. So yeah, this is definitely going to be the dominant strategy here. At the end, I'm just going to show off a Excel sheet. Like I said, I'm narrating this, so the audio might not exactly line up here. But basically, this Excel sheet is just a comparison of all 3 tests, showing off how much damage each skill did, how many hits each skill did. Unfortunately, I was silly and did not go through the second page of the first 2 tests, so I'm missing data for a couple of the weaker skills on the spectrum. At the end of the day, that doesn't really change the data too much, obviously, and we have the total damage, so we can see the difference between all 3 strategies, and it's pretty clear that the mixed strategy is dominant. So yeah, this has been actually pretty fun. There were a lot of rumors going into Awake that the Illium combo is no longer going to be ping-based, and a lot of people were pretty excited about that, myself included, which is why I wanted to get these tests out. Yeah, I'm excited to keep playing Illium moving forward, excited to learn the new strategy, and excited to test out the new V skill on some bosses. So maybe look forward to some bossing videos soon. I might also do a mobbing video because mobbing with Crystal Gate is pretty dumb. But yeah, that's it for me, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.